Hello and welcome to the Quietly Visible podcast. I'm your host, Carol Stewart, founder of Abounding Solutions and author of Quietly Visible, Leading with Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. And this is a podcast for introverted women who want to thrive as leaders and in life. And also for those of you who may not be introverted but want to lead as your authentic self without feeling that you have to put on a persona and be someone that you're not. And my guest today, I'm excited to be speaking to someone I've known for some time now via LinkedIn. We met on LinkedIn, and it's great to have her here, a fellow introvert as well. And we're going to be talking about modeling showing up as an introvert. So showing up introverted. So that those of you who feel that you can't be your authentic self can understand what it feels like to show up as yourself, and how modeling introversion, modeling being introverted, you can also help other women and other introverted women as well. And my guest is Sharon Hurley Hall. And I will let her tell you about who she is and what she does. But just as a quick intro, she's an author, educator, and anti-racism activist, a former journalist and writer with more than 30 years' experience. And Sharon is also the author of I'm Tired of Racism, True Stories of Existing Whilst Black and Exploring Shadeism. So hello, Sharon, and welcome.
Hi, Carol. Hi, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. I love the fact that there are so many spaces now where we introverts can just show up and talk all the things that we have to say about being introverted.
Oh, great. Thank you for coming on. It's great to have you here. So before we delve into our topic, tell us a little bit about who is Sharon. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Who is Sharon? I, the first thing to know about me is that I'm a polymath and I tend to have my fingers in a lot of pies. So yes, anti-racism is a core part of my business. I have an anti-racism newsletter that's now 5 years old, which goes along with the book that you mentioned. Um, as out of my writing experience, I teach people about newsletter creation and self-publishing. And the thing that's close to my heart at the moment is talking more about introversion. Some of you will definitely know, Carol, and some of your listeners and viewers will know that my sister Lisa and I co-hosted a podcast for many years called The Introvert Sisters, which ran for about 78 episodes. It hasn't officially ended, it's just been on a really long hiatus. Um, and so I wanted to get more, I've been called more and more to support introverts like myself, um, just to know that, these things are possible. Like, do be the person that I didn't have to model for me when I was young.
Yeah. So tell us about your journey, as someone who was introverted. What was have your experiences been, and have you always been able to model that, or did you ever feel that introversion was a deficit, that it was a lacking something, or have you always been positively affirmed by it?
That's actually a great question, Carol, because when I was young, people didn't talk about introversion at all. Many people assumed that because I was quiet in loud spaces that I was shy. But in fact, I'm really good at talking to people, especially one-on-one, and I can be out there when I need to be. It's simply that it drains me and that I need
Mhm.
to recharge. As you know, I'm among friends here, so we all know what we're talking about, right? And so for a long time, this supposed shyness was presented as a deficit. I was quite advanced in years before I learned about introversion, and then suddenly it all made sense. And it took some time actually after that, because even then, we live in a world that very often favors extroversion or the appearance of extroversion. And so, I'd be out there and I'd be going to the team drinks and the this and the building activities and all these kind of things and coming home feeling exhausted. Um, and I think what happened is, well, two things coincided really is one, I went freelance. This was when I was still primarily working as a writer, which allowed me to set my own schedule. And over time, I would create and curate my schedule so that I had that recharge time. And then in terms of the showing up piece, that's actually a lot more recent, last 5 years or so. I mean, one could argue that even in my freelance career, I was kind of out there, people knew me for the things that I wrote about and so on, but I wasn't out there talking about things in the way that I have been since George Floyd was murdered, which led me to the anti-racism work, which led me to the feeling that I couldn't be quiet anymore. And so now I am intentionally visible, but also intentionally protective of my alone time.
Yeah, I like how you said that, intentionally visible, but also intentionally protective of your downtime, your alone time. And if you can go back to your days as a journalist, and
Mm-hmm.
that can often be quite a fast-paced, energetic environment. So what was that like as an introvert
Well,
working in that sort of environment?
I in some ways, I mean, I was lucky in that I tended to work for publications with a long lead time. So I was not on, I was not working for a daily newspaper. I was working for generally monthly publications. So usually there'd be 1 week to 10 days out of the month that would be really full on. And then, at the end of it, you just need to breathe. But, those things, there are other aspects of being an introvert that give me strengths, gave me strengths, you know, deep thinking, the ability to plan and organize, that kind of thing. So, I've always been very organized. So, well, I remember in one of my early jobs, we we'd have we'd have a monthly print deadline. And I couldn't understand why, when we knew it was coming, why we were ending up working until 5, 6 in the morning for something that we knew was coming. So I started very quietly revamping our processes and deadlines so that, you know, yes, you worked a little later on print day, but it was more 2 hours rather than 6 hours, you know. So I think that there are definitely ways in which the way that we are able to consider and think and plan lend themselves to, making a difference in those areas and in anywhere that we choose to show up in, to be frank.
Yeah, uh-huh. And have you always been confident in yourself as an introvert, or
Oh no.
and even though when you thought you were shy, and there is a misconception about shyness and introversion because they don't mean the same thing. But a lot of times I find that because of the expectation that people will show up extroverted, loud, gregarious, and all that sort of thing, that can put pressure on people who are introverted to think that they're the problem. Did you ever experience that before?
I believe that in my younger days, I did wonder if, there was an issue with me because, bear in mind, it was always presented as a deficit, right? It was always
Mm-hmm.
presented as a deficit, something that I needed to overcome. Um, and I think confidence is a strange thing, right? I think as you get, I've noticed it in many of my friends, as you get older, you start to feel more confident in yourself generally. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that spilled over into feeling more confident in myself as an introvert. And when I got into the stage of my life where I was thinking, well, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, then that naturally had a knock-on effect on how I dealt with my own introversion. And, in my confidence in saying, well, actually, my social battery is low today. No, I'm not coming out, or whatever it happened to be. I've been out, I've been out for the last couple of days, so I'm going to have to give this particular thing a miss,
Mm-hmm.
in deciding how to manage my schedule to put time into it so that there's recharge time, in between calls, for example. I try really hard not to book back-to-back calls. I try really hard to have space in between, you know. I try, I I have, although I'm not doing too well with it at the moment, I have a day a week where I theoretically don't take any calls at all, right? You know, I
Yeah,
have a week once a quarter that I block out so meetings can't be booked. So I've got very intentional about that now. But
yeah,
no, I didn't always have that confidence. That has grown with age and time and repetition, really.
yeah. That's it. And you can, as with the passage of time, the more we learn about ourselves and our environments, the world that we're in, the more we better, well, for many people, because not all people do, the more we better understand ourselves and what our strengths are, what floats our boat, so to speak. Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I,
Yeah.
you know, I think, self-knowledge is a wonderful thing.
Hmm.
And once you have that knowledge, then you can decide what to do with it. I mean, there are times when you push yourself beyond your usual limits because you have a good reason to. And there are other times when you choose not to. I think, you know, when I say to people, yes, I'm an introvert, but yes, I was a journalist. Yes, I was a university lecturer. Yes, I appear on podcasts. Yes, I have spoken at events. I do all those things because those things serve the wider mission
Hmm.
and they're important. And we're all here to do something, right? We all have
That's
a
right.
reason to be around, to be on the planet. We have work that we're called to do. And I use my introversion as a strength. I don't record it as either a deficit or a superpower necessarily, though it brings certain advantages. It's who I am,
Hmm.
and it's always better to work with who you are, I
That's
believe.
it. Yes, and I'm a firm believer in that as well, is seeing the strengths that are in introversion. And too much emphasis is focused on, particularly in leadership, is focused on the extroverted traits,
Yes,
and on the ones that introverts bring, which are very much needed in
for
leaders.
sure.
The deep thinking, the self-reflection, the analytical, the empathy, the listening. Those are all skills and qualities that we need in
Necessary,
leaders. Mm.
absolutely essential. And so that's part of the reason why I remember years ago when I think I was working as a freelance writer, and I had a blog. I had a writing blog that I ran for 7 years just to, share what I was learning as I was going. And someone once said to me, I didn't even realize there were other Black women doing this, right? And so there's a part of me that wants to say, yes, you too can do the things that you feel called to do, as long as you do it in a way that is healthy for you.
Mm.
So a lot of what I'm working on now, I'm working on a couple of new things. A lot of what I'm working on now is, how can I support my introverted peers to share the strategies that have worked for me, to
Hmm.
build strategies that will work for them, to show up and then, to combine my knowledge and content because, so many of us are good at writing, right? To say, well, here's an easy way for you to start to get out there, which will lead into other things, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, and writing is a great way for introverts to raise their visibility and their profile, to showcase their thought leadership, their expertise. Um,
Absolutely.
so if somebody who's maybe never written before, or maybe just written emails or reports at work, what sort of steps can they take to build their profile and raise their visibility through writing?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to a little exercise I used to do with my writing students. and some of my clients, I did a program called the Business of Writing for a little while. And what I asked them to do was to think about 3 things that they felt they had expertise in, right? Just write those down. Then, under each of those 3 things, write 3 subtopics that they could talk about or write about. And then for each of those subtopics, write 3 list points that would be included in talking about that, right? Immediately you have the middle of your writing. All you then need is a good story to hook people in at the beginning, something, an experience that's happened to you, and a conclusion that's the point you're trying to make. And so that is your outline.
Great tips for anybody who's wanting to get going in writing. And I speak to many women who are wanting to do that, but they just don't know where to start or how to go about it, or they're nervous about putting it out there because they're worried about trolls, or that it's going to be criticized, or they're going to be judged negatively.
Well, here's the thing. Other people's opinion of you is none of your business. And certainly it's so funny. This is the second time today this has come up, because someone literally just before I came on this podcast messaged me to ask about mentoring people who wanted to get out there with writing, which is obviously something I could do. So it's it's something that I'll think about. I'm doing it in some ways. I hadn't explicitly tied it to the introversion piece, but who knows? Who knows? Watch this space.
Yes, because it is a great way. There's sort of industry publications that you can write for. There's your organization's newsletters or organizational blogs that you can write for. You can even set up your own.
There's so
blog.
much
There's so
that
much
people
that
can
can be
do.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
think
I've,
I think it's a great way to start, because my newsletter was really the starting point of the current phase, in that I was writing about anti-racism all the time. I published 10 times a month. As I said, I extracted some of that content and made the book, but that led to many of the other opportunities I had to show up more visibly, to speak at conferences and that kind of thing. So you never know where that first article will lead you. And I don't think it's something that people have to be afraid of, because we're here, we're human beings, we have thoughts about things, and we can share them. And with a little assistance, you can really, as you say, share your thought leadership,
yeah.
galvanize and engage the audience that you most want to reach.
Yeah, and there's many tactics that you can use with regards to this, because I once had a client who wanted to increase her visibility in her organization, and what she started to do was to write and publish on LinkedIn. And as a result of this, people in the organization that she didn't really have much contact with, because they were connected on LinkedIn, they saw this, and she was demonstrating her thought leadership, her knowledge, her expertise, that they started to approach her and say, oh, I didn't realize that you knew about this or you knew about that. And it really helped her to raise her visibility. So it's something
Yes.
that you can use.
And even expertise, there's a wider definition. There's professional expertise, but my friend Dr. Gillian Marcel also talks about lived expertise, right? The knowledge that you gain through moving through the world and having certain experiences. And that, for each person, that is their secret sauce that they bring into the rest of it, I think, to make it different from, what everybody else is saying out there. And I think, we need more of those voices that we're not hearing. We need to hear more from those quiet people that are being drowned out by the extroverted noise. That's my personal opinion, right? Because I think we need to hear from those deep thinkers who could change the world, and not just from the people that already think they know it all.
Yes, and I would agree with that. And there's something about sharing those stories, sharing our stories and our journeys that connect with readers, connect with people, 'cause people like to connect with people that are relatable.
Yes, obviously. Obviously. I
Hmm.
mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that is where, when we do things like, you're doing your podcast, or we did our podcast, or, you're showing up, you're writing articles, you're visible, then you're expanding the common idea about what is possible for introverts.
Hmm.
And let's face it, for Black introverts as well.
Yeah,
Because there's another layer that you have to deal with on
that's
top
right.
of the introversion in terms of
Yeah.
how you're perceived, you
Uh-huh.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. Sorry, go on. You were going to say
No, no,
something.
no, because I was going to say, a lot of people, as a Black person, if you decide to fake extroversion, that can also be taken the wrong way because people can
Mhm.
still see you as aggressive or angry or whatever it happens to be. And so, that is something that also has to be navigated.
That's right. Yeah. And so tell us a bit about your podcast that you did with your sister, Lisa.
Right. Well, the podcast that Lisa and I did a podcast called The Introvert Sisters, which we started in April 2020. And we started by, we called it, our subtitle was Two Quiet Girls in a Noisy World, right? We
Mhm.
both knew that we were introverted. On Myers-Briggs, we're both INFJs, if that means anything to people. And so we just started having conversations about what was going on. So, I mean, it started with COVID, but it very quickly morphed into a multifaceted podcast, which dealt with introversion itself, how people saw it, how we experienced it, what that meant for how we experienced the world. We got in a couple of guests as well. We also talked about things like, what makes us happy, right? So I remember I remember we did a whole thing on period dramas, for example. So we had the odd amusing episode as well. But also we dealt with activism. What is it like to be a Black woman introvert activist, right?
Mhm.
What does that look like? What are the issues that we face that other people might not be facing? So yeah, as I said, that ran for 78 episodes. Right now, I've appeared a couple of times on Lisa's current podcast, which goes with her book, Space to Exhale, something that we all need. And
Mhm.
I have a mini show called What Sharon Said also that I've run. This was a bit of a challenge to myself as an introvert because, video is like the final frontier for me. Not so much in terms of this, but just being constantly out there. And I have decided that that is a barrier that I'm breaking through. So
Mhm.
I set myself the task of recording 10 episodes this year. I've done 9 so far, so I have one more
Well
to do,
done. Well done.
right? And now my current challenge for October is to record 3 short videos every week in October. And then I can post them at intervals so that by the end of October, I'll have 12 videos. And I have posted, I think, I've recorded 6 and posted 4. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to go above and beyond to transcend those limits. And it's not always easy.
Mhm.
Video is definitely the thing most likely to make me sweat. But the mission is important and being
Mhm.
able to reach people in multiple formats. But I could not have started, 5 years ago. I could not have come straight out and done video. I had to work up to it. The
Yeah, yeah.
writing for me, and as 3+ decades as a writer, the writing for me is where everything starts,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. And so how did you sort of conquer or overcome that sort of apprehension of doing videos?
Well, funnily enough, it goes back to the podcast because Lisa and I decided after doing our first season that we were going to do some video episodes and just try and navigate that together. So we started doing that, and people loved the videos. They weren't particularly professional. It was more a case of done is better than perfect. The aim
Hmm.
was to just get out there. And so we did that. So now it's less new to me,
Hmm.
and so um, I wouldn't say that I'm afraid of it anymore. I would say that it still feels sometimes like a bit of a stretch, but I'm committed to growing in that particular way. And so that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that come out from what you've shared to me. One is about the mission and the reason, the why behind what you do. So you know that it's for a purpose, for a cause which is bigger than you, that you're getting a message out there. And the other thing is that practice, confidence
Yes.
comes with practice. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Every skill that we ever had was improved by continuing to repeat it.
That's
And
right.
so that is where I need to get to. And when I get to the point where it starts to feel comfortable, then I can get to, okay, now how do I make these better? How do I improve the quality of my videos? But right now the mission, the purpose is to make it, to get it into a cycle where it feels like something that I can do regularly, that I can pop up and do if I need to, and that I don't feel that quivering in my stomach, you know?
Yeah. And that's another thing, that what you said, that done is better than perfection. Sometimes we do wait for that perfect moment, for that perfect look, for that perfect opportunity, and we can be sitting here waiting forever for that to come, and it may never.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's get out there. Let's do what we have to do. And I think, one of the things I'd say is that many of the things that I'm now doing that people know me for are things where I thought, oh, well, let me just try this and see what happens. You know, I didn't know when I think I first wrote an article about anti-racism. When George Floyd was murdered, I wrote two articles within the space of a week. One was called I'm Tired of Racism, which later became the title of my book. And the other one was called While Black, Thoughts on the Assumption of Wrongness. I got to the point where I had to speak. And so as a writer, I turned to writing. I published these two essays, and I got such a response that I thought, oh, there's something here. So then I started the newsletter. And I had no idea. I mean, we're just into year 6 now. We've just completed year 5 of the newsletter. I had no idea it was something that I'd still be doing. No idea at all, you know.
Yeah, and it just shows the impact that,
Yeah.
6 years later, people are still wanting that content that from you, shows the impact that it's having, which is good. So how do you model introversion, and what does that modeling introversion look like to you?
Modeling introversion for me looks like speaking openly about the fact that I am an introvert, despite what people might think. It means talking about my need for downtime and recharge time. It means talking about my aversion sometimes to peopling, right? It means like yesterday, at the time of recording, I posted something about something someone had said in an online meeting that kind of made me recoil about the need to be on camera. And I thought to myself, but no, I don't need to be on camera. I do better thinking when I'm off camera, right? And I can contribute, which I did. And so it means being very transparent about my experiences moving through the world of both my life and my work as an introvert. Sometimes that's sharing stories from the past, and sometimes it's sharing what's going on now. And then the other part of that is actually just getting out there and doing things. People don't believe I'm an introvert because I'm visible. But just because it's an introvert, it doesn't mean that you're cowering in a corner. It doesn't mean you have social anxiety. It doesn't mean you're shy. It doesn't mean that you can't bring it when you need to, right? It just means that the way that your energy is fed by alone time and recharge time rather than being surrounded by people all the time. And
Yeah.
so I talk about it very openly, and again, that's been a journey from the podcast with Lisa to, continuing to talk about it now. It comes up all the time. In my latest, my little video series, I have an episode called Maybe It's Because I'm an Introvert. So yeah, I talk about it all the time. So I like to think that just by being visible and talking about introversion at the same time, I am modeling that this is something that is possible for people to come out and be visible and talk about their topic, right? Whatever
Yeah,
that happens to be.
yeah.
Um,
And I think that is important, that we do model that what we want to be. Well, not model,
yeah,
but we are what we want to
yeah,
be. And so the people will see that and be encouraged as well by
yeah.
it. Mm.
And I think also sometimes your modeling is saying no to things,
Mm.
honestly, as an introvert, and saying why you're saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell those stories too,
Yeah.
about the things I chose not to do because I felt they would drain my energy after the other things I'd already done.
Yeah. And I think that
So
is really important, that so knowing the boundaries to put in place and knowing when to say no, not feeling that you have
absolutely,
to go to every single event and become totally drained out, but managing your energy time, managing your downtime so that you have time to recharge. That is so important.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so I think, for all of us, it's important to have those strategies, to be able to, well, for me, reading is very relaxing. I'm an avid reader.
Mm.
Um, some of the things I read are not relaxing, but depending, if I'm reading about anti-racism, that doesn't tend to be relaxing. But I read fiction a lot.
Hmm.
So reading, going to the beach, having a swim, being in water actually is very relaxing. Um,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's a matter of just taking a 10-minute or 15-minute recharge break. I tried an
Yeah.
experiment earlier in the year where uh, I put in a 30-minute break, which I didn't always achieve. And I would just go and lie by an open window and let the breeze blow over my face and, just close my eyes. I wasn't asleep, but I
Hmm.
was resting.
Yeah.
And then it enabled me to come back and carry on with the rest of my day.
Yeah, and I think it's important that introverted women leaders build those sorts of space into their day that they can have those recharge breaks. Um,
Yes.
Otherwise, if you're going to back meetings, everything is so full on where you're expending a lot of energy, you'll be exhausted by the end of the day.
Yes, and can I also say that the way we run events doesn't have to be extrovert friendly, it could be introvert friendly.
Mm.
The event that Yinka Awola and I ran in London called Quiet Queens, we had no icebreakers. It was a small event. It was a small group, 12-ish
Hmm.
people plus us, right? Had people come into the room, just find their seat and take the temperature of the room, maybe speak to the person next to them. But by the end of the 3.5 hours, there was so much laughter and chatter. You wouldn't believe you were actually in a room full of
Mm.
introverts. But it was about providing the space for people to just be before forcing them to do.
Mhm. Yeah,
You know?
and I think providing those sorts of spaces is important. When I did my conference for introverted leaders last year, it was wonderful to see the interaction and engagement that people had with each other, because it didn't put like you didn't sort of put on any kind of what I typically call extroverted ways of being. So people could just
Yeah.
be themselves. They could speak to the people on their table. And
Hmm.
there was so much networking that actually went on and connections that were made. Like
Yes.
afterwards, seeing how the people had connected with each other, it was just amazing to see. And like you would not have thought that that was a group of introverts. And one of the things that I learned about it, because initially I was going to do it for, like get hundreds of people in the room,
Hmm.
have it theatre style. But then I recognized, well, no, that's not introvert friendly. So we had it
Oh,
with a more intimate group. Yes, there was still about 90 people there, but
yeah.
they were sat round tables so that they could speak to each other. And
Yeah.
at the breaks and at the lunch break in particular, it was just so nice to see the people sat, in groups
Yeah.
talking to different people, getting to know different people, connecting with different people. And what was so good
Yeah.
about it was I had people come from all over, um, all over the UK as well as from different parts of the US as well, which
Yeah.
was just so wonderful
Oh,
to see.
sounds amazing. It
Yes,
does. It does.
yeah. And so you do your immersion program. Tell us a little bit about. that.
All right. So my self-expression immersion day,
Mm-hmm.
right, is it marries mindset work with content strategy. So it's designed to be introvert friendly. So it's 4 to 5 hours with a little break every hour to recharge, right? And we start in the morning with custom affirmations and a custom meditation, guided meditation, based on what people identify as the things they want to work on. So I actually have, several emails beforehand with some questions, and then we get that bit sorted. And, there's a little bit of journaling if people are open to that as well. And so that is about, like bringing the temperature down, level setting, letting people ground, right? And so then we have a lunch break, and then or a break depending on when we're doing it. And then for the last half of it, we work on the content piece. And really, I find that people really respond to having that opportunity to just be calm, right? To go inward for a little bit. And it makes focusing on the strategy piece so much better. And
Mm-hmm.
so I am one of my other hats is I'm a Reiki master. And so, so that kind of piece is really important to me. Although I have a meditation expert that I work with, someone who really has been doing this for many, many years. And so that's the person that uh, comes and leads them through a meditation session tailored to them. And then they get the recording to take away so they can
Mm-hmm.
play it again and again. And, they get custom affirmations created for them as well. And so the last one of those I did, the person finished within the next month the project that they had been stalled on for 6 months. I
Wow.
I I included a 1 month weekly accountability check-in follow-up as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's that. So that's like the short version of it. But then there's also the option to spread it out if people want additional support over a longer program. So, we could run something that ran over 3 months or 6 months where there was regular check-ins. We'd start with that and then we'd, have regular meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, and then currently I'm also, I think I mentioned this, doing um showing up introverted masterclass, which will happen sometime in the next few weeks. I'm working out the date today.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time this episode drops, I'll probably know when that is.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and just, practicing what I preach. Another way to invite people in to see what can work for them. And then, then people can decide if they want to go deeper with some of the other things that I offer.
Mm, great. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing all that. And it's been lovely speaking to you. Um, we will put links to your website in the show notes. But if people want to get in touch with you, follow you, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, you can follow me on LinkedIn where I'm Sharon HH. You can go to sharonhh.com, which is my website. And of course, you can always check me out on antiracismnewsletter.com, which is my anti-racism newsletter.
Great, thank you. So, listeners, if you're watching, maybe you're listening, do go and check Sharon out. Go to her website. We'll put the links in the show notes so that people can find you. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you
So,
so much, Carol, and thanks everyone for tuning in. It's really a pleasure to be here.
so do go and check Sharon out and keep an eye out for her masterclass when that comes out. So, thank you for listening or watching. And if you're looking to increase your confidence and influence and impact, if you haven't completed the free assessment on my website, go to aboundingsolutions.com. There's a free assessment there that you can complete under the resources, and it will give you ideas about areas that you can focus on. And so until the next time, bye.